Now there we're going a bit. Now we're going to go a bit deeper on a topic Alessio introduced. That was the relationship of climate change and agriculture, with Yanniek, Antonio, and Alfonso. That is getting wired here. So to make a bit of the transition between the more economic topic and agriculture, now I'm going to quote The Economist on this matter on going from sustainability and what even sustainability means and into regenerative. So sustainability is a slightly amorphous word. What exactly are we sustaining, and for whom? Do we really want to sustain a status quo that has catalyzed multiple global crises, including climate change, biodiversity loss, and widespread food and energy insecurity, to name a few? Sustainable development is a bit clearer in its definition, focusing on the idea that progress and growth should contribute to positive environmental, economic, and social outcomes while minimizing or completely avoiding negative impact. But what if we reframe in a way that sustains a healthy planet and population while replenishing and rejuvenating the living systems we depend on? That is what regenerative development is all about and what regenerative agriculture is all about. So farmers all over the world, including those in Europe, are suffering the consequences of extreme climate events that we've been seeing around the news lately, especially this summer. However, the way they manage their land holds the key, or at least one of them, to regenerate the ecosystems and mitigate climate change. For that, we need investment that we've been talking about, and we need knowledge. To talk about this, we have Antonio. Antonio works in CrowdFarming as head of business development. He started off as a lawyer and then took the business path, working in sustainable business consulting firm in London and its land use department. He has worked in projects with Ellen MacArthur Foundation, EU funds allocation, and smallholder farmer crops in Africa and South America. In London, he bumped into Mountain Hazelnuts, a social venture that works with 12,000 farmers to build an organic hazelnut value chain and using organic farming techniques. From 2017 to 2018, he coordinated a very large project with finance from the IFC, Global Agriculture, Food and Security Program of the World Bank, developing an inclusive and climate resilient hazelnut value chain in Bhutan. Alfonso and Yanniek here live at La Junquera, a regenerative organic farm in the south of Spain. Alfonso has over 10 years of experience managing the family farm and has been working with business development in Commonland as president of Albelal Association, and he studied business management at Boston. And Yanniek, she's the founder of Regeneration Academy that is going to take care of that knowledge creation within regenerative agriculture, training students, future farmers, and agri-food leaders in regenerative agriculture and systems. She has background in sustainable development, studies and work monitoring the transition of farms to regenerative agriculture for Albelal. They both are building a hub for regenerative agriculture in the south of Spain, restoring an abandoned village and bringing young people back to the countryside. After this super long intro, off to you.
We're done.
Good. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, cool. Yeah, so when we prepared this chat, they told me it was going to be with two farmers. And even if I've been working in this sector for a while, the best thing when you have a farmer is to ask questions, okay, to understand a little bit better what the purpose of of regenerative agriculture and the role in its in achieving a more sustainable economy. Anyway, so well, my first question is like very simple. We've seen how agriculture has moved from seeking to maintain, well, to become like sustainable and to not to contaminate, disturb, or destroy biodiversity. And over the last few years, we're seeing that there's a shift in the paradigm of like working with nature, like a more holistic way of working with nature, being grow as a part of the ecosystem, and this is called like regenerative agriculture. And we're seeing, yesterday I did the exercise when I came here to Google regenerative agriculture and then many food companies, and I see like that McCain has a commitment to have a 100% of regenerative agriculture hectares by 2030. McDonald's has 150 farms with regenerative agriculture in France. Pepsi has committed to have 22,000 acres of, that's roughly 9,000 hectares of regenerative agriculture. Danone also has a problem, and then I stopped because I thought that was like a little bit like my point was proved. And then we see also there's a Netflix documentary with Giselle Bunchen, so it's kind of like mainstream, okay? And I think like on the other side, you also see that organizations like Greenpeace, they warn that say, okay, this is something that is real, but there is like a big danger for greenwashing, okay? So I think like the purpose of all these questions that I'm gonna ask you is to put a little bit on what's regenerative agriculture and how can business help to implement regenerative agriculture in the food system. Okay, so what's regenerative agriculture? Yeah.
Small question.
Yeah.
For us on our farm, what we have seen is that we live in a very degraded landscape. We live in a landscape where we have very low organic matter, where biodiversity has gone lost in the last decades, well, probably a lot longer, where many rivers have gone dry. So for us, we have seen a very big need to transform something that has been broken. We've seen a very big need to replenish our aquifers, to increase our soil health, to be able to walk over our land and actually see animals, see insects, see wildlife. And I think for me, that is what regenerative agriculture is. Besides that, it's also restoring other parts of the ecosystem. It may be the parts that are not necessarily productive, but that are the natural areas or the human capital, because that is something that maybe we tend to forget in this farming aspect, no? Like where are the people in this? So what we're also trying to do is we want a system in which we can give people healthy jobs, but that also we can bring more people back to this countryside, because we also believe that if you live in a place, you take care of it a lot better. And for me, that is what that means.
Yeah, I think indeed a lot of people have a different view on what is regenerative agriculture. For a lot of people, I think it's doing minimum tillage or doing direct seeding that's already considered regenerative agriculture. And indeed, it's in our view is, for example, with a baseline of being organic, and then from then is a bit of a step further from that. So we want to make sure we are improving three things: soil, water, and biodiversity. That is through different techniques. It's very context-based. It depends on where you are. You have to do different things. In our case, we do a lot of things for. And many techniques also are applied for, they improve not just one, but also a few of them or all of them. Like when you make ponds, you're reducing the erosion, you're infiltrating better the water, you're replenishing the aquifer, and you're increasing biodiversity. So that affects the three of them. When we apply compost, then that's generally improving the soil. And it doesn't affect that much, for example, biodiversity or, well, also a bit, hedges or other things. And on top of that, we try that not only, we have, I think, a particular view on that is not just those three things on regenerative agriculture, but also we try that our crops and our projects in the farm have 4 returns at the same time. That is something we learned from the Common Land Foundation, which is that they have a economic return, that everyone knows that one, that it has environmental return, which is also more and more trendy, or more people are aware of it. Social one as well, by providing jobs, good quality ones, and bring back the people to the territory. And that what we do is inspiring also, so other people want to replicate it and do it as well. So I think we try kind of to have those 7 things in mind when we do agriculture.
Okay, and so just to go a little bit more specific, which kind of crops do you grow at La Junquera, and what's the difference between growing them in a regenerative fashion than in conventional, or even in organic? What will be conventional, organic, and regenerative in?
So, for example, we have, well, first of all, we have pistachios, we have almonds, we have cereals, we have aromatics, we have some walnuts, we have vegetables, we have cows, and there are sheep grazing on our farm that are not ours.
Grains and vineyard.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And we have a lot more. And I think when you look at a conventionally managed orchard, let's say pistachios or almonds, that's generally one that is tilled, let's say 4 or 5 times a year, that is free of any weeds or anything other that is growing besides the almond or the pistachio. Generally, you don't see a lot of biodiversity on such a plot. It's sprayed with chemicals to prevent or to attack the pests that are in there, which are generally also there because maybe there's a big monocultural field with only almonds or only pistachios. And then you have organic. Well, there's many ways in which we can understand organic. Organic, for some, is really taking good care of your farm, of your field. So indeed, there's many shades of organic, I would say, but the minimum is that you don't use chemicals, so you use natural products. But of course, there's many people that do a lot more than that. So I don't want to say that organic necessarily is bad, and that we know a lot of organic farms that are doing a really good job. And then I think regenerative is taking it maybe a step further than that and thinking, okay, I want to actually improve my soil. I want to improve the biodiversity on this land. So what you maybe do in an organic field is you have these ground cover strips between your field, or maybe a full year round ground cover if you have the rain to make that happen. You might have hedges around your field or even within to provide habitat for biodiversity. You might have planted it on keyline or in another way to make sure that we keep enough water on the plot. Maybe you even have some ponds or some islands for biodiversity in the middle. So it's looking going a step further and seeing what's missing, you know, in a perfect ecosystem, or as perfect as we can make it. What is missing? What can we do to make that happen?
And you can always do more.
And you can always do more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if we have all the money in the world, we could do a lot more. But
yeah. Okay. When we talk about organic agriculture, there's a big role of certifying. You know, and this is a rabbit hole that I don't want to go through, certification of organic agriculture. But do you feel that there is a need of certification for regenerative agriculture? Is there any certificate that is spread? What is your view on this? Is this something that is going to be useful? Is this something that you deem as something that could potentially maybe corrupt it because it will be very limiting and there will be like a one size fits all and many cases will get out of the picture? Or what's your view on this?
Go for it.
Yeah, it's there is one certification that is the regenerative organic certification. We have people here that actually work in that, and it is quite recent, at least in Europe. I think the US has been working for a bit longer. And well, it is very new, so therefore they are, I think, adapting to each context, which is very different. So we tried to start a process a few months ago to apply for it, but some of the practices we were doing would not qualify. For example, in our case, we do need to do some minimum tillage between the trees we have in the dry land. Otherwise, when on the plots that are irrigated, you don't need to do that at all. But on the dry areas that we have an average rainfall of about 300 and a bit millimeters a year, without that, the trees either die or they would not really produce. And then that was not considered as one of the options to be regenerative organic, because I imagine that in the United States, different contexts, they didn't have that need. Now, we just had a conversation like a few hours ago about it. There is an option to do it now. It is going to be contemplated in that, so we are going to apply for it, yeah, and try to get it. It's quite difficult. I mean, the process is not super easy. Okay. It's quite some paperwork, but yeah.
Yeah, I think indeed it's difficult, no? Because there are so many certifications, so at some point you drown a bit in all the certifications that you can get for animal health, or for organic, or for this, or for that. And the more crops you have, the more diverse your farm is, the more time and money it costs to get this certification for everything that you do. For example, if you have multiple vegetables in one plot, it's already per vegetable you have to pay for the certification. So then this is not easy, and I can definitely understand, especially if you're a small farmer, that this is maybe just not worth it. Which doesn't mean you're not doing all those good things. It's just, you know, the time and effort that you have to spend. We're quite a big team, and we haven't managed yet in half a year with all this documentation. Imagine if you're a small farmer.
Okay, good. I mean, and is it more about the process, or about the specific practices, or is it more about the output, or is it about both? What is more important, like the quality of the soil, the I don't know, having certain levels of biodiversity? I don't know how you measure that, but if you're counting birds, I don't.
Counting grasshoppers.
Yeah,
counting,
literally, yeah.
So is it more about like the practices, or is it more about like the final output? You go and you walk there and you say, okay, this is a healthy ecosystem. Or is it about, are you tillaging or not? Or are you using this technique or not? Or how?
At the moment, I believe, well, we also can ask Jose later. Part of it, I believe, is really about the type of practice that you're doing. So are you tilling? How many times a year are you tilling? Are you not tilling? Do you have seeded ground cover? Do you use compost? I think that is something that is most kind of easy to monitor in a certain way, because otherwise some things we can count, but we can also make it up. You know, we can say, I saw 150 birds, but yeah, who knows how many I really saw? Yeah, even I cannot know for sure. So
yeah, well, that's the how do you say, that's one of the things in certification. No? It's always a lot of self-reporting, which is always dangerous.
Well, and it's something you also have to like. You have to have time for it. You have to understand how to do that. And we, for example, we have many students on our farm, so we have a lot of help, but many people don't. You know, many people, one guy and maybe on a tractor the whole day. How does he also do this monitoring?
Students that stay on the farm doing their master thesis, and then they help a lot, depending on what their thesis topic is about, to monitor a lot of these things. So indeed, there was a student the last spring counting all the grasshoppers and all the insects compared in this field that was having these different practices compared with a control field that didn't have any of those practices, and seeing indeed what was the difference. Okay. But I don't remember like what was the X 1000% difference, because there was basically nothing here and some here. Like, so if your baseline is you start from having very little, then it's very easy to increase a lot. So that's quite good. I think that's something we've seen, that nature with Many times with little efforts, you do see quite a big result fast.
Okay. Do you feel that this message and this growing technique is getting through the final consumer across the value chain? Like, do you feel that the final consumer is there a market? Is it still very niche? How big is this, or small?
It's still very niche because I think many people, many farmers, they have to sell their produce in bulk. So it comes on a big pile of organic, but nobody really knows which part is regenerative organic, which part is tilled, which part is irrigated, and which part not. So I think crowdfarming is one of the few ways that I know that you can actually get through with your story and what you do and your practices to this final consumer. But there's not many other ways. Yeah, you can be on the market and stand there physically and tell your story, and okay. that might be a
So in the
way.
traditional supply chain, I didn't know this is very interesting. So let me see if I got this straight.
Yes.
So in the traditional supply chain, your field, which is
grains, our grains,
and has done like a lot of like regenerative, and you have like a booming ecosystem there, and you have that production, and it doesn't get through because it's aggregated in bulk with other farms around or not around, and then there's no way to maintain that traceability, and that even the message doesn't get across to the final consumer. So, okay.
Yeah, unless you have your own brand or you have a collective brand, which in our territory, there's also another company that is trying to get that indeed to the end consumer or to some supermarkets. This is still a small project. It has potential to grow, but indeed there's not that much knowledge, I think, no? Not that much production and not that much demand, maybe, and maybe the demand says if there would be more production, it would be easier, and the production says if there would be more demand, it would be easier. So I think we are maybe a bit on that stage right now.
Cool. I've seen that that you've done you did a collaboration with Patagonia. How businesses like Patagonia or any other business can actually support like regenerative agriculture? Like, what was your experience, lessons learned? What will you change? What will you repeat if someone comes to you and says like, look, I have a business, I'm really conscious about the impact of the food supply chain and food production into the environment, and I want you to do something about it. Like, which approach will you use?
Well, actually, Patagonia is, we're working with them already for 5 years. And they first supported us when we organized the Regeneration Festival on our farm, which was a really, really fun event in which we did a lot of reforestations on the beat. Mm-hmm. So we had DJs in the middle of the natural landscape, and people were planting, and there was a lot of fun and music, good food. So they supported that, and from there onwards, they kept supporting us each year with a few thousand euros to do little actions on our farm. So we've done a lot of hedges, we've made a lot of canals for water retention. This year, we're doing a project with local families in which they come and they do reforestations on the farm, and we teach about how to do that, what's the importance of biodiversity. So Patagonia is really involved in these small, really concrete actions that restore the natural areas for us.
They also made a video that they stayed for a week in the farm, and they made a video that we are super happy with. And I think that has been very good for us for communicating. And I think in 4 minutes, it explains very well what we do, and why we do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something I'm experiencing also, like the power of using business as education tools and spreading the message. No? That's that's something very important.
Yeah.
So anyway, how difficult it is to transition from a conventional to a regenerative? Like today, I was having a chat here, and they were telling me that something like, oh, you just integrate cattle, no, like the sheep that were out there, and turns out that here, just specifically for olives, it's more difficult than you will expect, because they were telling me, the shepherd, that if you just throw the cattle in, because of the lines, the sheep cannot see each other, so they get lost. And it's really difficult to manage. So now you need to lift a little bit like the branches so they can, and that made me thought that we talk about like these techniques and it looked like very ancient, but there's a bit of like a fair bit of technology involved in them. And how difficult has been for you? When do you think, since the moment you took, how?
I think it took us 10 years to understand and to experiment and to make many mistakes on what we've made many mistakes. And now we got a little bit more land, and basically within 1 year and enough money available, we've been able to do all these techniques in 1 year in that piece of land. But it cost us 10 years to understand our context, to try out what does work, what does not work here. If it doesn't work, is it because we just tried it wrong, or should we do it in a different way, or should we make a compromise? And and all those things that really takes time. And learning about what is your context is a process. And I think for farmers, we are used to things taking a couple of years to really see some results. But I think the outside world likes it fast and within a couple of months. But we work in years and seasons, and I think that's something that people could learn from.
Okay, last one. Talking about like the different paces of land and the real world. What about what do you find? I don't know if you have had like external funding on aid. One of the problems I've encountered in agriculture is like the tempo of finance, and the one in agriculture is quite different. So you go, you ask for money, you ask for a loan, and then we always talk about the long term and how, and just especially if you involve like trees, they take time to produce. Yes. But the bank can wait. How has been for you experience with finance? What do you miss? Is there anything that you will change? What would you advise as a farmer to a financial institution? What will you request?
Well, indeed, I think to go much more long term. What you just said on trees, I think now I've seen, at least in the banks in the area, they are more promoting. We have this special loan for planting trees, and with the perfect conditions for you. But still, some of them would work if they're irrigated, because everything is faster. But if it is dry land, like in our case, it just takes a super long time. So indeed, they say you don't have to pay back in the first year and a half or 2 years, but then you do need to pay everything back in 6 years. Well, 6 years is when you have your first harvest. So
if you're lucky.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, if you don't have any problems with pollinators and
frost.
So it is impossible to do that. And that is in the case of almonds, for example. In pistachios, they take 10 years. Yeah. So we also ask, hey, how could we work out a loan for pistachios? With those timing, like, it's totally impossible. At least at the doors we've knocked and the times we've tried. But still, we work with banks all the time with leasing for machinery and for plantations. We did some, but most of it has to come from your own savings to be able to cover that mismatch in timing.
I think also in impact investment, they want to have an impact, but then they make the loan in such a way that you have to pay it back in 10 years with an interest rate of 8%. Well, that means for a farmer, okay, I can only focus on one thing. I have to make money as fast as I can to be able to pay it back. Anything extra that I thought of doing that would be really good for biodiversity, would be really good for the health of the total ecosystem, I cannot do because it's not efficient enough. So what you do as an impact investor asking for such a thing is you take out all the options to diversify, to be a diverse ecosystem. And that is, I think, what is important in regenerative agriculture. That is what it's all about. If you want to be have this complete ecosystem, you need to also give this space to the farmer to be this complete ecosystem, to have that apple orchard that maybe doesn't give a direct income, but gives a huge addition to the society, to the community, to the local community, maybe that educational space that doesn't give that much money, but that is also bringing back this inspiration. And I think impact investors should really think about that. Like, are you trying to really create an impact, or are you actually just going to want to have some money? Sorry. Didn't want to offend anyone.
No, that was great. That was great. That was great. I loved it. That was what I was looking for. So, I mean, we are done with Christina. It's like, are there any questions from the public?
Can technology empowers you as producers to make it better or faster? And if yes, how?
At this moment, we're quite a low-tech company. We're an extensive farm. You see a lot of tech used in more intensive forms of agriculture. For us, what would be very interesting is more on the monitoring side. So technology on how to measure humidity, how to measure soil health, these type of sensors that are now coming available on the market. And that is very interesting for us. The point is we have quite a big farm, so if we want to do that on farm level, that costs a bit of money. Yeah.
I think indeed there is a lot of potential with a lot of technology, but maybe in some cases the prices for dryland are a bit high, but we would really like to do, for one thing we saw, that, for example, is these drones that they do mapping of everything, all of the geography, and then you continue to do those flights over the years, and then you can see very well all of the weak points for the erosion, and then you can get all of that information in the GPS of the tractor, and then with the tractor you know very well what are the points where you can make those little dams or little trenches and do those corrections. But yeah, for smaller farms that give more income, maybe that's easier. In our case, it's a lot of farm and it doesn't give a high income per hectare. So now it's still a bit expensive, but I hope it gets cheap soon. And then
I think especially in the soil health measurements, that would be extremely interesting. I know that in the north of Europe, they have now these lasers that you can go around the farm and then you get the information to your phone on all your nutrients and all those things. In the south of Europe, they don't have it yet, but that, for example, would make understanding your soil so much easier for any farm. Now it's very expensive. You have to do the soil measurement. You have to bring it to a laboratory. Then it costs 50 euros per soil sample. But with such a laser that you can go multiple farms even in one day, you have a very different connection to what is needed on your farm.
The lab where we're working now increased it to 100 euros per soil sample.
And you need at least a few per field. And then it's...
I think one of the things that inspires farmers, and inspiration, I definitely agree, is one of the key ingredients of regenerative agriculture, is that you need to follow the rules of your own environment. No? So you need first to look at your environment, see what you need, see how much can you regenerate. And this inspires you more rather than following the indication of universal certifications. No? So I'm not against universal certifications, but how can we build or support a certification that don't kill the inspiration? No? Because at some point, maybe I feel that if you follow the books more than what you see, maybe that can kill a little bit the inspiration, don't you feel? And another question is, what ingredient does regenerative agriculture has to be so inspiring? Because I definitely agree that it's so inspiring. I mean, you have been inspiration for a lot of us here. So if you can take just one ingredient, what will you take? I'm very philosophical.
Very poetic, Gonzalo.
Those were a lot of questions, Gonzalo. If I could take one element that's most inspiring about regenerative agriculture. I think for me, it is that you can actually restore an ecosystem and you can see change already within 1 year. You don't have to wait, of course, 20 years to see many changes, but you already see differences. You see ladybugs coming back. All of a sudden there's, again, rabbits. Maybe there's a lot of more butterflies and bees on your farm. Like, there's very tangible differences. Maybe your soil health, the structure of your soil already improves within 1 year. And that is really things that make you not lose hope, I think.
Yeah, indeed the same. I think what attracts me the most is the biodiversity part. I think it's very important and nice that soil organic matter increases because it's needed to continue with doing agriculture, and it is one of the most important parts, but it doesn't definitely get me as excited as being a new group of partridges flying around, or more wild, I don't know, more wild boars. I think we have enough, but maybe more of deers or other things that are not so common to see, or new types of eagles that we didn't see before. I think that is definitely what inspires me the most, and I do see a clear connection between the practices we do and the increase of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and about the certification, so you have been in the process of being certified by Agricultural Regenerative. So are you comfortable? Are they flexible with you when you are explaining these problems that you are having?
Well, we haven't started yet again with the process, but I must admit that I'm a bit allergic to paperwork. So what I do to not lose inspiration is we have now a person in the office helping us out full time that loves paperwork. There's some people that just have that, and it's amazing. And I think she will do that, most of that process.
We hope she does.
And then everyone will be happy. So I recommend maybe other farmers to do the same, or group together to have something similar to be able to do that. Yeah.
Very good answer. Yeah.
Get your person.
Okay.
You mentioned it quickly, but I'm interested to hear more about the social side, about local populations, about attracting new people into farming, and the link between that and what you're doing.
Yeah. So for us, we live in an area where most of the villages now are back to 50, or in some cases 6 people. So they're almost empty, and that's something that we see all over in our territory. So we really see this really big need of inspiring people to come back to the countryside, to maybe take over the farms of their parents, of their family members, but also to see this as a worthy option for a livelihood and a job. Because I think in these, let's say, 20, 30, 40 years ago, people would tell their kids, please leave this area. There's nothing for you here. This is done, you know? We're going to take out as much as we can, and then that's it. There's nothing for you here. And we tried also by living there, and also by showing that it is actually really fun, and there can be young people, and you can have a good livelihood, that this is a good option. And through the Regeneration Academy that we have, we work a lot with courses on local schools. We have a lot of kids coming also to the farm. We host also courses for young unemployed people, so that then they get to know this place and they get inspired, and we give them the tools, we give them the network, so that after that they can either find a job within our network or maybe even on our farm. And this gives opportunities, and we're actually now the only village in the wide area that is growing. I mean, we were 2 people, now we're 20. So we are growing, and that is a good thing. But also people around, because of all the jobs that we generate, there's people coming back, there's people living in the area, and we hope to continue that work as well.
Also by diversifying crops, well, grains, for example, is the one that has the least amount of labor per hectare. I would say sage, or these aromatics in our case, the one that has the highest amount. But indeed, before, when we had in the farm on just the monoculture of grains, we had 1 full-time person and a part-time person helping with seeding and harvesting. And now we've expanded also beyond our farm. We are managing some other farms around, but now we have 20 full-time people working in the farming part. So that has provided a lot of jobs in the area and people that stay. I think, yeah, the challenge is maybe a bit that the smaller villages that indeed were Los Rollos or El Moralejo had 1,000 people. One now has 3 and the other one 15. And the farmhouses, no one really lives in the farms anymore. So generally most of the people go to bigger cities, or in our case to the bigger town of the area that is Caravaca, that has maybe 30,000 people. But still is very difficult for people to want to live more in smaller places, and it's big distance with no one living there between Caravaca
and we see it coming, we see this inspiration returning, because I think the first open days that we did were maybe 5 people, and last open day we all of a sudden had 100 people. So we were a bit scared of that change. Also, we're like, oh, okay, now we have to organize bigger open days. But that also shows that indeed people are like, you live here, and what does that look like, and how can you organize that? And if I want to live on my farm and I want to fix my house, how do I do that? Where do I start? And I think we get more and more questions like that. Like, okay, how, you know, what can we take from what you do and put it to use in our places?
Yeah. Good. Sorry about that. Okay, I think we are done. So thank you very much. Thank you.